Tonight, a new warning about our planet. UN scientists say the negative impact of climate change may be irreversible unless we take swift action. Chip Reed on what that action is, plus a more immediate climate problem, an early snowstorm in New England. Brittany Maynard, who sparked a new debate over doctor-assisted suicide, dies on her own terms.
Cancer is ending my life. I am choosing to end it a little sooner and in a lot less pain and suffering.
Virgin Galactic's Richard Branson vows to press on with his goal of taking tourists into space. John Blackstone has the latest on what caused the test flight disaster. And Steve Hartman on the road with Lauryn Hill, achieving the dream of a lifetime.
Today has been the best day I've ever had.
This is the CBS Evening News with Scott Pelley, reporting tonight from CBS News Election Headquarters in Studio 57.
Good evening. Melting glaciers, rising sea levels, higher temperatures. If you think someone's trying to tell us something, someone just did. The scientists on a United Nations climate panel are out with a new warning about climate change, and they're telling us what they think needs to be done before, as they see it, it's too late. For one thing, they're calling for major changes in the energy we use to heat and cool our homes and power our cars. Here's Chip Reed.
Evidence that the Earth is warming is unequivocal, and emissions of greenhouse gases from cars, power plants, and factories are primarily to blame. That's according to the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. In the strongest language it's ever used, the panel concluded that continued emissions will increase the likelihood of severe, pervasive, and irreversible impacts. Climate scientist Michael Oppenheimer says the effects are already being felt around the world.
The productivity of crops is slowing down due to climate change. There are effects on human health. That is, more people are dying due to heat waves, due to climate change.
Oppenheimer is a principal author of the report.
We have a small window of opportunity the next couple of decades where we can slow this thing down and start to reverse the trend.
Accomplishing that would require a massive global shift from fossil fuels like coal and oil to renewable sources of energy like solar and wind, and could even require expensive futuristic technologies to remove carbon dioxide and other gases from the atmosphere. But legislation before Congress has been blocked, primarily by members from fossil fuel-producing states, and developing countries like China have shown little interest in reducing their emissions. Next month at a UN conference in Lima, Peru, delegates plan to draft an agreement on reducing emissions, and Scott, at a global conference in Paris late next year, they hope to adopt it.
Chip, thanks very much. Well, New England is seeing some seasonal climate change. Maine is digging out of more than a foot of snow. Some parts of the state got up to 20 inches yesterday. Utility companies are trying to restore power to more than 100,000 homes and businesses. The state's biggest power company said it isn't sure that all the polling places will have electricity on Election Day. That, of course, is tomorrow, though many folks have already cast ballots in states that have early voting. In the battle for control of the United States Senate, our CBS News Battleground Tracker finds that the Republicans have a better than even shot of taking it. We've assembled some of our campaign 2014 election team tonight, and first we're going to go to congressional correspondent Nancy Cordes on why the Democrats are nervous. Nancy?
Well, Scott, all you need to know is that there are 9 battleground seats in the Senate, and 7 of them are held by Democrats right now in states that by and large went for Mitt Romney. So these are Democrats who would be in tough races even if the president were more popular, even if voters felt better about the economy. As it is, Republicans who I spoke to today sounded markedly more confident than Democrats, especially in some of these real toss-up races in Iowa and Colorado. They're even starting to feel like they might be able to win in races that seemed out of reach just a week ago in New Hampshire and North Carolina. while Democrats argue that they still have a superior ground game that could help them to make up a 2 to 3 point deficit on Election Day.
Bob Schieffer is our chief Washington correspondent, and the anchor, of course, of Face of the Nation. Bob, what are you looking for tomorrow night?
Well, I'll tell you this, Scott. Most of the analysis suggests that the Republicans will pick up enough seats to take the majority in the Senate. It'll be the first time that the Republicans will control both houses of Congress. But I tell you this, I'm not making any bets on this yet because this electorate is in the nastiest mood I have ever seen. They're mad about everything. Nothing works. They don't like the president. They like the Congress even less. Who knows? They may decide they don't even want to vote. I'm going to wait and see what happens in this.
Now, it's important to note that there are 36 governor's races that are up tomorrow as well, and Bill Whitaker's been following those. Bill, what are you looking for tomorrow night?
Scott, 3 races to watch. That's in Florida, Wisconsin, and Colorado. In Florida, the Republican Governor Rick Scott is in a very tight race with the Democrat Charlie Crist. And in Wisconsin, Republican Governor Scott Walker is facing Democrat Mary Burke. Now, both Scott and Walker have followed the Republican playbook on taxes, on abortion, on same-sex marriage. And tomorrow is kind of shaping up to be a referendum on those policies. Now, in Colorado, the Democratic Governor John Hickenlooper is facing a backlash for having supported tougher gun legislation, and he's in a very tight race with Republican Bob Beaupre. Now, Scott, the same number of governor seats as Senate seats are up for grabs tomorrow, 36. But the candidates for governor have outspent the candidates for Senate by more than $50 million.
Wow. John Dickerson, our political director. John, what's riding on the governor's races?
Well, you know, voters tell pollsters that basically Washington is so frozen in gridlock that even if the party that controls the Senate changes, nothing will change. But in the states, they pretty much still operate in government the way it's supposed to. And so that means the governor's elections are going to affect the way people's lives are changed on education, on law and order, on health care. Take Maine, for example. It's one of a dozen governor's races. In that state, the incumbent, Paul LePage, has vetoed his legislature's bill to expand Medicaid as a part of the Affordable Care Act. If the Democrat, Mike Michaud, wins, that expansion will take place and go forward. There are also political stakes. If Scott Walker, the Republican, is reelected in Wisconsin, or John Kasich is reelected, Republican, in Ohio, immediately they'll be talked about as presidential hopefuls because those are battleground states. If they don't run, they'll nevertheless be models for anybody who does want to win in those states.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone. Bob, Nancy, John, and Bill will be joining me on our CBS News election night coverage. We'll have updates throughout the evening, and then an hour-long special at 10, 9 Central. Of course, you can get the latest returns online at cbsnews.com and on Twitter. Our handle is @CBSPolitics. Today, Richard Branson, owner of Virgin Galactic, said Friday's crash will not destroy his plans to carry tourists into space. He vowed to fly with his family on the maiden voyage when his spaceship becomes operational in the future. For now, the mission is to find out why the prototype Spaceship Two broke up during a test in California. Here's John Blackstone.
As investigators are continuing to collect evidence from the wreckage scattered over 5 miles of desert, they now know what happened in the seconds before the spacecraft broke apart. Twin tail sections of Spaceship Two called Feathers were unlocked by the co-pilot earlier than usual. Investigators saw that on cockpit video. Christopher Hart is acting chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board.
This was a test flight accident, so that meant it had cameras on board.
How many cameras?
Well, 6 on that airplane. There were some on the chase airplane. There was at least 1 camera on the ground.
What is supposed to happen is shown in this Virgin Galactic test flight video. The mothership releases the spaceplane, which then begins to climb. As it goes up, the feathers remain behind the craft. On descent, pilots deploy the feathers up to slow down the spacecraft. So when this was going up, those should not have been opened.
That's correct.
Not until near the top of the trajectory.
Correct.
But they did open.
And then about 2 seconds after they started to move, that's when the tape stops.
Michael Alsbury, the 39-year-old co-pilot, was killed. Peter Siebold, the 43-year-old pilot, remains in the hospital after parachuting to safety. NTSB investigators have not yet interviewed him. The crash is a setback for billionaire entrepreneur Richard Branson. He has already signed up some 800 potential space tourists who've paid up to $250,000 to ride a Virgin Galactic flight into space.
One or two people must be naturally extremely nervous at this stage. We need to know exactly what happened to make absolutely certain it can never happen again.
Branson had hoped to make the first commercial passenger flights into space by next year. But federal investigators here say their final report on this accident, Scott, won't be completed for about a year.
John Blackstone for us tonight. John, thank you. Over the past few months, Americans got to know Brittany Maynard, a 29-year-old California woman diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. She vowed to end her life on her own terms, and over the weekend, she did, taking lethal drugs prescribed by a doctor. Jan Crawford was one of the last reporters to speak to her.
I think until anyone has walked a mile in my shoes and knows what they're facing and has felt the, just bone-splitting headaches that I get sometimes, or the seizures, or the inability to speak, or the moments where I'm looking at my husband's face and I can't think of his name.
When we spoke with Brittany Maynard 3 weeks ago, her message was clear.
To the people who would say, well, you're choosing to end your life, that's suicide, you would say, no, it's what?
No, cancer is ending my life. I am choosing to end it a little sooner and in a lot less pain and suffering.
In a final message, Maynard said, it is people who pause to appreciate life and give thanks who are happiest. Love and peace to you all. After her diagnosis last spring, Maynard moved from California to Oregon, one of 5 states that allow doctors to prescribe lethal drugs to patients with terminal illness. She spent her final days crossing items off her bucket list, like a trip last month with family to the Grand Canyon. She said her one regret is not having children, but hoped that sharing her story will be her lasting legacy.
I'm not ashamed to attach my name to what I think is a right that should belong to all terminally ill Americans.
Now, the public response to Maynard's decision has been overwhelming. In less than 1 month, her YouTube videos have gotten more than 13 million hits, and Scott's supporters hope her story will lead other states to pass their own death with dignity laws.
Touching interview, Jan. Thank you very much. In New York, this was move-in day for the first tenants at One World Trade Center, the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere, 1,776 feet. It has risen just steps from where the Twin Towers stood before they were brought down by terrorists 13 years ago. Publisher Condé Nast will occupy nearly a quarter of its 104 floors.
At the beginning, you're kind of going, what am I doing here? But as you get through the site and you understand the security process, you can see there's plenty of security here.
The building's designers say it is much stronger than the Twin Towers were. It took 8 years and nearly $4 billion to build. The world rallied behind hundreds of girls kidnapped by Islamic militants. So whatever happened to them? And one false step and this higher wire act could end when the CBS Evening News continues. You probably remember the 200 schoolgirls who were kidnapped by Islamic militants in Nigeria. Well, hope of finding them diminished even further today. Back in April, their plight was a sensation with pleas for their release or rescue from all over the world. First Lady Michelle Obama and Hollywood celebrities joined that chorus. What became of all of that? Deborah Pata found out.
There's been no trace of the kidnapped schoolgirls for nearly 7 months now. Despite Nigeria's assurances, a rescue operation was underway. Boko Haram leader Abubakar Shekau has released a new video mocking any attempts to find them. We have married them off, he said. They are all in their marital homes. The girls were abducted from their school on the eve of their final exams. It sparked a worldwide campaign for their release. Under immense pressure, the Nigerian government made a surprise announcement over 2 weeks ago that a truce had been reached. An end to Boko Haram's reign of violence and a return of the girls to their desperate families. But Shekau emphatically states there never was a truce. Only battle, he said, hitting, striking, and killing with a gun. In July, a former negotiator told us, imagine the worst, and it has happened. He said there were reports that many of the girls had been repeatedly raped, and others were sent across the border to neighboring Chad and Cameroon. It appears this may have been right.
And Deborah Patta is joining us tonight from Johannesburg. Deborah, why did the government announce a truce?
It looks like the Nigerian government's been scammed. We spoke to a man who had direct knowledge of the rescue talks and told us the authorities paid millions of dollars to a person fraudulently representing Boko Haram, but who actually had no power to secure the release of the kidnapped girls. We made repeated calls to the government. They kept promising to respond. But Scott, still, we've heard nothing today.
A tragedy with no end in sight. Deborah, thank you very much. Well, for decades, Tom Malyatsi and his brother talked about cars on the radio, and we will remember Tom when we come back. Nik Wallenda comes from a family of daredevils. Last night, he brought his high wire act to Chicago, walking back and forth between two skyscrapers more than 500 feet above the Chicago River. During the first crossing, he walked up at a 19-degree incline. On the way back, he walked blindfolded on a wire that is about as thick as a nickel is wide. Look at that. Yikes. Have a look at this photo. It's all over social media. A young girl at a Sunday campaign rally in Texarkana, Arkansas. Is she happy? Well, it depends on what the meaning of the word is. Yes, that is Bill Clinton, former president turned photo bomber. Bet that girl's happy now. What a photo she's going to have to show to her kids one day. One of the most popular hosts on radio died today. Tom Malyatsi, one of the Car Talk guys. Tom and his brother Ray entertained for 25 years on National Public Radio, answering such questions as, how do you know if you've got a good mechanic? Answer, by the size of his boat. Tom Malyatsi died of complications of Alzheimer's disease. He was 77. In a moment, one of the most exciting basketball games we've seen in a while, and it was all because of her. Steve Hartman on the road next. We're going to end tonight with an update on a story Steve Hartman brought us last month about a young woman with a dream and her race against time to achieve it. It all came down to this weekend when she had her one and only shot. What happened? Here's Steve on the road.
When people lined the streets of Cincinnati yesterday, they weren't hoping for a glimpse of some prince or president. In fact, this wasn't about celebrity at all. It was about an unassuming college freshman basketball player named Lauren Hill and her attempt to turn a living nightmare into a dream come true. About a year ago, Lauren was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. But instead of wallowing, she set a goal to try and live long enough to play in her first college game here at Mount St. Joseph University. To that end, she practiced. Even when she couldn't dribble, she tried. Even when she couldn't stand, she stayed.
When I'm not there, I feel like I'm letting people down.
Lauren has weeks to live, at best. And here she is, worried about letting other people down.
Why does that matter so much to you?
Because I love them. They're like my family. And they keep me going. It makes me positive.
You got one heck of a teammate right here.
I got one heck of a team.
To make sure Lauren would get a chance to play, the NCAA moved the Mount St. Joe season opener up 2 weeks. They also got a bigger gym to accommodate the 10,000 people who bought tickets.
I can't wait for her to look up in the stands and see all the people, her friends and family.
You're going to see it in her eyes, just how happy she is to finally be on the floor.
It's going to be like a really, really touching moment. But I'm really, really excited that so many people care enough to come.
The crowd was thrilled just to see her set foot on the floor. And that's really all anyone was expecting. Lauren just doesn't have the energy to run down the court more than once or twice. which is why her teammates wasted no time getting her the ball. It was the first basket of the game. Lauren came in again near the end and scored the last, bookending this remarkable fairy tale.
We will remember that layup forever.
Today has been the best day I've ever had. Thank you guys so much.
Like Lou Gehrig before her, Lauren Hill has found a place for joy in her personal tragedy. And although no one wants her disease, we could all use a little of what she's got. Steve Hartman on the road in Cincinnati, Ohio.
We have more for you about Lauren Hill on our website, cbsnews.com. And this Friday, Steve will tell us about the role played by the opposing team, the Hiram College Terriers, in making Lauren's dream come true. And that's the CBS Evening News for tonight. For all of us at CBS News, all around the world, good night.